Alright, well that's a picture of New Guinea. But before we talk about that, I'll just talk about my testimony and how I got saved. I got saved when I was a little kid. I was 9 years old when I got saved. I was the first one to get saved in my family, before my mum and my brother and everyone like that, my sister. My dad's still unsaved. My grandma was picking me up and taking me to Sunday school as a little kid, and that's how I came to know the Lord. But my mum got saved sometime after I did. And when I was a teenager, I turned my back on the Lord and just went my own way and was doing my own thing and was living in sin and rebelling against God. And God kept calling me back and saying, come back. You know how God does that when you're doing the wrong thing and you're living in sin and He's saying, come back, come back. And then, you know how the good shepherd, he goes and he breaks the sheep's leg that keeps wandering away and doesn't stay by his side. Well, the Lord broke my leg. Is it on? I thought I turned it on. It's on. I'll move up higher. Is that better? Alright. Now I need to cough. Alright. So, yeah, the Lord was calling me back, and I was living in sin, just doing my own thing up until I was about 20. So since I was about 16 or 15, I started walking away from the Lord. Until I was... Yeah, painful experience. But I tell you what, I knew what straight away. We were mucking around and I jumped out of a tree. It probably would have been about as high as this. We were mucking around, we're out in the bush. And I landed piles of things, and it was all soft. And you could land in it. You know, if you landed flat, you know, like jumping on a mattress, you can land flat. But if you jump on your feet like this, you go... Well, this stuff was like that. It was piled up about this high. And I jumped straight through it on my feet and went right through and hit the ground, and my leg just went, and I knew as soon as it happened that my leg was broken, and I knew as soon as it happened that it was God calling me back. Because for many years I had walked away from God, and I was trying to be good. You know, I was doing all sorts of things that I shouldn't be doing, and I thought, I shouldn't be doing this. I need to be better. I need to be better. I need to be good. But the more I thought that and tried that, actually I was becoming worse and worse and worse in my sins, you know. But I knew that God had done that and was calling me back to Himself. And so I had a broken leg, and there I was at home, and Mum says, you're not hanging around. I was an apprentice at the time, so I didn't have any money or anything like this. And Mum said, you're not hanging around home for 6 weeks with a broken leg, because she's like, no way. So she sent me off to camp. There was a camp out the back of Sydney. It was called Word of Life. Has anyone heard of Word of Life? Many, many years ago. Yeah, okay. It was like a big Bible college out there and camp and everything. We used to go out there when we were kids for school camps on holidays and things like that. And so Mum sent me out there. She goes, no way you're hanging out here. And it was out in the back of the bush in this valley right out on the Hawkesbury River out there, and 2 hours from out of Sydney. And I got a broken leg, and I'm out there, and I was surrounded by Christians, and I had to go to Bible college and help in the kitchen and, you know, do all these kinds of stuff. And I was glad for that. You know, I wasn't exactly laying on the ground with a broken leg just going, yes, thank you, Lord, for breaking my leg. But, you know, afterward, you know, when God does something, He chastens you and brings you back and you're glad for it, I am glad, because after that time I repented. I gave my life back to the Lord. I was already saved when I was young, but I turned my back on God, and He called me back to Himself. He humbled me. And so that was when I was about 20, 21, maybe 20. And, yeah, God done all sorts of things like that to me, because I'm a really slow learner, you know. I've crashed cars and... Anyway, since I was saved from a really young age, God's always laid a burden on my heart for going to New Guinea. I don't know if it's because Brother Dave is up there in New Guinea, and he always talks about it, and he always got prayer letters and everything. And I actually got saved as a result of him. Because he got saved, he witnessed and prayed for his mum and dad straight away, and they got saved. And because of his mum and dad getting saved, I got saved. You know how it works? More people get saved. And so that was a direct result there of my grandma and granddad picking me up and taking me to church every second Sunday. And it was a big detour for them to come and get me. It wasn't just like 5 minutes away. It was like, it would have added a good nearly hour to their trip to get me to church. But I just praise the Lord for that. my grandma taking me to church, and the Lord straightening me out with my leg and all the sin and rebellion I was in, and I gave my life back to the Lord. And it was challenging, you know, things to get through and addictions and things. But I always had this desire for New Guinea. And I went for the first time in 2003. I went for 6 weeks. And then this was before I was married. And I went the first time then. And then I was always wanting to be a missionary. So I was careful who I married. Fortunately, my wife, before we were married, told me that she was interested in being a missionary. So that was good. She's interested in missions as well. And we moved up to Papua New Guinea for a year. We didn't move up there. We lived up in New Guinea for a year in 2011, do a short-term mission trip, and I've been a few times since then. And just to see if that was definitely what the Lord had called us to do, you know. And a year is a long time, but it's a short time as well. It was a long time as in you go to New Guinea or you go somewhere overseas for 6 weeks and you have a holiday and it's all really fun and exciting and you just don't want to leave. But then when you live there and you get in the culture and you see how it really is, and it comes down to day-to-day life and living, and we had little kids, and Reuben was 3 months old when we took him there, and it was quite a challenge. But it was good, and we were there, and we saw what the Lord wanted us to do, where He definitely wanted us to be up in New Guinea, and we found that that was what He wanted us to do. So I'll show you some pictures about New Guinea. Most of these pictures are from when I was there. All of them are, actually. And so we'll talk, that's a little bit of testimony about how I got saved, and now we'll look about Papua New Guineans, okay? So this is a classic just picture of a village, okay? So they live in grass houses, they really do. They don't have running water and electricity and cars and all these kinds of things that we take for granted. You know what I took for granted? Hot water, eh? Man, I missed hot water when we first moved to New Guinea, man. So they don't have any of that, they wash in a creek. And so they're the houses, and these people are seriously lost people. They are in great darkness, spiritual bondage. There was witch doctors and sorcery, and Seventh-day Adventism over there, mixed with witchcraft and superstition and all these kinds of things. It's a terrible state of fear that these people live in. They literally live in fear. They all walk around with machetes, and that's not just so that they can go and work in their gardens when they're walking around. You see the guys that are really afraid because they have a metre-long machete. It's got a metre-long blade. And you know that they're guys, and they've always got their posse of boys all around them. They're all got big machetes too. They're the ones that are fearing for their lives. Everyone carries machetes, like even women and kids, and everyone's got machetes. And yeah, they live in fear. They are terrified of the dark. They're terrified of people. They're terrified of little lizards like this big, eh? It's really quite funny. We had some people looking at a computer like this, and we had a little tiny snake that was about that big, and they were just looking like this, and I just chucked it on him, and whoa, they jumped right back. Superstition, that's what it is. It's not because they're afraid of getting bitten or anything like this. It's superstition. Alright, so we'll talk about that a bit later. So New Guinea, we'll be working with the church in Kargu. That's the village that we were living in. There's Brother Dave baptising a man. That guy in the middle, Xenos, he's getting baptised. That's Joe on the right. The guy over there on the right is Peter, and he's looking after the church in Kargu at the moment. He's a preacher and an evangelist. He's not the pastor of the church, but he's just looking after it. Can you see? And so he's doing a good job, and he's looking after the church. And so we're going to go there and basically carrying on all the ministries that Brother Dave was doing and the ministries that we were doing when we were up there, youth ministries and market ministries and preaching. And there's a bunch of young kids from up in the village. They're always pretty excited to come up on the station and play games, because there's nothing to do in the village. There literally is nothing to do in the village except fight and steal and smoke and walk around. Like marijuana is a big problem. They're getting young kids now smoking marijuana. It's ridiculous. All the teenagers, you know, it's rife over there. It's big. They grow it and sell, and they buy the guns and all this kind of stuff. So there's a lot of opportunity with these guys, you know. And these kids don't go to school. They haven't been to school. They'll probably never go to school. They went, we would probably say, once a term or something like this, you know. that school just isn't an option. Getting a job, what do you want to be when you grow up? You know, on that question. It's just not even an option. They just live a village life. It's just a matter of survival. Just eat and sleep and eat and sleep and get through the day and wait for the sun to go down. And these guys, they're just hopelessly lost. They're in such spiritual darkness and opportunities and things, but these guys have got nothing. Here's a whole bunch of young adults. These were the young adults that were in the Bible school. That's the church there that's on the station where we'll be going to. They were doing Bible school in 2011 when we were there. Some of those guys are village people and some came in from outside. But working with these guys is great. You know, they love to hear the Word of God. You've got unsaved people sitting in Bible school. How good is that? Wouldn't you love to have unsaved people sitting in Bible school? People come to Bible school and get saved in Bible school. They come to Bible school to learn to read. So what a good opportunity to teach people the Bible. Okay, I'll teach you to start off with the ABCs, right? Now we'll move on to John 3:16. You know, and they want to learn, and they want to work with these young people, and these young people are the up and coming adults. You know, like they're the ones that are either they're going to be on the streets with the guns holding people up, or they're going to be the next guys in the church leading your singing and things like this, and the next preachers and evangelists. These guys, there is such potential, and they're not dumb people at all. Don't think that they're just because they're uneducated, they are smart. I reckon they're smarter than us. Some of the things that they can pick up really quick, just like this, it's amazing. You know, and a different way of thinking sometimes. They can really pick things up and learn to read and that. And once they learn to read, all they want to do is read. Especially when they're older, a young adult or an adult, all they want to do is read, because all they want to do is learn. Because all they've had is their village life of just nothingness. And so they just want to read, and these guys can just read and read and read, and they remember what they've read and all sorts of things like this. So there's awesome opportunities there with the youth, preaching and teaching in the church. That's inside the church there. Yeah, it's a nice building. That's Dave Crow built that church a number of years ago. They decorate the church every Sunday morning with the flowers and everything. They're really nice. Yep. This is Peter. He's looking after the church at the moment. This guy is an unreal evangelist. Hey, this guy is unstoppable. He was a full-on rascal. Just imagine the worst rascal. And that's what these guys are like. Like Fraggle was like that. Peter was like that. This guy used to hold people up on the highway. Him and his brother. One day they jumped out on the road and held off a bus, and it was a busload of police. And so the police were jumping out, and they've all got a big gunfight on the... Yeah, all the police, they've all got M16s. You can get photos of the police. It's unreal. Hey, can I take a photo of you with your guns? And they're like, yeah. You know, posing like this. They're not afraid of it. And they're not afraid to use them either. They don't chase rascals and arrest them. They'll shoot them first. So him and his brother are holding up this busload of police, and they're having a big gunfight on the side of the street. And he just bailed down the mountain and miraculously got away. And not long after that, he got saved. He ran back to his village because they were after him. And he got saved in 2001. Yeah, he got saved in 2001. And he had a real burden for his family and the neighbouring villages, because the villages are all related by marriage somehow. And this other village, he went and preached, or he went and witnessed to all these people in his village, another family village, and they actually beat him up and kicked him out of the village. And just after he gotten saved, only been saved a few months, and he's already out there witnessing to them. And they beat him up and kicked him up and said, we don't want you here, don't come back here again. He had a big coffee garden. Coffee is what they grow for money. And he let it all go to bush. You know, he went, that's, you know, I'm just working for God now. I'm not even going to look after my coffee garden anymore. You know, I'm just going to take care of my needs and my family. I'm going to work for God. And his testimony was unreal. He got beaten up, and he was saying, Father, forgive them. And on his testimony, a couple other people got saved as well and were coming into the church in Cargo there. And after 10 years, this guy prayed every day. He's a faithful man of prayer. You know, He's a prayer warrior. This guy prays every day. He says he prays every day, and I believe him too. He's a warrior. And every single day, he was nearly in tears in 2011 when we were there. He said, you know, that village I was telling you about, it's Ijamana, it's just over the mountain over there. He goes, they're those ones that kicked me out, and I've been praying for them for 10 years, and now they've said, come in and bring us the gospel. And they've said, we're sick of this Adventism. This isn't helping us solve our fights. This is just making us more angry. This witchcraft, sorcery, this is not working for us. What have you got? You know, because they can see the change in this. He was a full-on rascal who murdered people, and now he's a Christian who walks around witnessing, loving his enemies, and that village was opened up to him, and he was just rejoicing so much. And so we used to go out there every Tuesday night, walking out to this village, and it was his family, and he was just, he loved it, He was excited, you know. He's like, we're going out there to that village. I've been praying 10 years for these guys, and now we're allowed to go in there. He's really good value, that guy. The market ministry. This is a market. This is just up the street from us. This is your Woolworths. This is Coles. You want to go shopping at Coles, you pick up a barbecue chicken or something. This is where you go out. On Friday morning, there's this busy market, and hundreds of people come to this market. You know, it's Friday morning. It's the big social event. They're all there, and they're playing darts and playing cards and gambling away down over the other side and doing all their things. And everyone sells their potatoes, and you can see there's peanuts there and soap and little packets of salt and, you know, all the necessities. You can buy cans of Coke and 2-minute noodles, all that kind of stuff. And they sell whatever they grow. You know, they'll grow to survive, but whatever is extra they'll try and sell off, you know, to make a little bit of money. And that's their income. And it's not much. You go and buy a bunch of bananas for 5 cents, you know, and you're like, yeah, I sold all my bananas, and they probably made about $2. Yes, I sold all my bananas, you know. It's just such a different way of life. But we can go and preach there, just where that big dirt side of the mountain is up there, is where you preach. That's pretty much the middle of the market. The market goes around the road this way and around the road that way. That's on a road too. And sometimes cars come through there in the markets. I've had to drive through there on market day. It gets a little bit awkward. You know, people got to move their little mats out of the way, and got to go really slow, because if you ran some kid over or something. But there's opportunities there to preach at the market, and when you start preaching, the people will stop walking through. They're all walking up and down the street like this. And once you start preaching, you say, you know, like, all right, morning everybody, we're just going to preach a little bit here. Let's just open in a word of prayer and start reading the Bible. And, you know, everyone will kind of stop. And then, you know, the crowds will build up, because they're trying to get, you know, they're all the people that would have been walking through. And they'll stop, and there'll be a gap about as wide as this building, you know, be here in the middle. And there's a big crowd of a few hundred people, you know, like 150 on this side and on this side. And you can preach to them right there, freely as anything, you know, just liberty to be able to preach to these people. And they'll listen, you know, and they'll listen and hear what you have to say. And, you know, handing out tracts, and you got boys behind you there sitting on the grass praying for you while you preach, and some people walking around in the crowd, you know, handing out tracts to people as they're standing there. And then you get to know these people, because they're all stopped, and you see people that you haven't seen for a while, and you walk up to them, or they'll come and see you and talk to you. And being able to preach in the markets like that is, you can do it anywhere. It's not just that market. I don't know how you'd go in town. You'd have a bigger crowd, actually. And there's just the opportunities there to go and preach. So they're the ministries that we'll be doing, and the things that we used to do. Women's ministries, Sarah and the kids. Treated pretty badly up in New Guinea. This lady, I think she's got about 6 kids now. That baby that Sarah's holding, that baby's about 3 months old, and she came up to us and she said, oh, do you want to name our baby? And what a privilege. She's like, you're my friend, and we haven't named our baby yet. You want to name it? No point naming something and getting too attached to something that might not live anyway. So that's pretty tragic when you hear about things like that. But this lady's a Christian, and she's faithful, and she's actually got another baby, and her brother bought it from the markets. And when we went up there in September last year, we went out to Chicago and visited, and this lady was telling us, she got this little baby girl. She'd probably be 1 by now. And her brother rings her up. He went into town and said, "Oh, you better come into town tomorrow. I bought a baby." I'm really crying here, just hearing these stories. I'm like, this is tragic. I'm like, how do they sell babies? Like, it's not legal in New Guinea. But, you know, she said, "Oh, you might be bending down looking at the potatoes or whatever, and they might just whisper, you know, the baby's for sale, or if you want to buy the baby," or something like this. And, you know, a little young mum, you know, young teenager, unwanted pregnancy. Oh, man, I felt so sorry for this. This cute little baby, you know, she's just crawling around still. And, yeah, it was 150 kina, which comes to about $75. $75 you can buy a baby. Anyone want to buy a baby? You know, you're tempted, aren't you? Just out of pity and compassion. Logistically, you could do that in New Guinea. We could do that, but we couldn't bring them back to Australia, you know. And I was just nearly crying over this little baby. She's telling us this whole sad story, and we're just like, wow, that's amazing. And so there's nothing for women and kids, you know, nothing. So to have a Bible study or anything for the women, it just, because all they do is work at the gardens and cook, and all the guys just sit around and smoke and chew betel nut and play cards. And they actually throw a lot of money away on cards. You wouldn't believe, I'm surprised how much they actually gamble. It's a bad thing, eh? Gambling and drugs and marijuana. They grow it and sell guns. I don't know if that just skipped a picture or not. Did it skip a picture? No, it was just a bad change. Okay. I'm going out to other villages. I already talked a little bit about that, actually. This is Fraggle. I call that the dodgy bridge of death. You can see it was nice and sturdy and, you know, Australian standards. You walked across it and it would bounce like this. You had to pray before you went across it, and one at a time on the bridge. Thanks, guys. But that's down, across the river, went down up the mountains, going around with these guys. Traveling around with these guys is unreal. Eh? This guy's Fraggle. You've probably heard of Fraggle if you get Dave Crow's prayer letters. He's a bit of a machine. He's another on-fire evangelist. He's not afraid of anyone. He's the same. He used to be a rascal. I'll tell you more stories about him later anyway. But going around with these guys, because these guys are so bold, and, you know, you're a bit unsure, you don't really know the place and what you can and can't do and everything, and they just like walk up and hand out tracts and talk to people like this. It's unreal. And they're all friends with the rascals. They all know them. You know, so there's a big group of scary-looking guys in the middle of the road, all smoking and machetes and all dirty dreadlocks and everything like this, and you're kind of looking at them, and they're looking at you, and you're with these guys, and they're friends with them, and it's like, yeah, he's made a nice bunch of friends, hey? They're the good people to be friends with, because when you're coming down the roads, they're going to see you, and they'll let you through. You know, they won't hold you up. Oh, yeah, we know him. But, yeah, you talk to these guys. You know, when you're with them, if you weren't with these guys, you wouldn't be able to get in as much as you could otherwise, because, you know, he used to run around with them, you know, but he's gotten saved, and they know he's saved, and they know he's a Christian, and they've seen the testimony in his life. It's unreal. We'll be helping Dave and Julie Crow out in Yonki as well. Also, out at Yonki on the station, maintenance is a big thing. We're always fixing cars and generators and buildings and all these kind of things. Those cars get really worked, eh? It's a constant job. That's always pretty fun. I don't mind doing that. A bit of mechanical stuff and fixing things. That's what I was up there for in 2011. When I helped Dave and get involved in ministries and run the youth group and just be a help and heaps of logistical, you know, because he's so busy. He's running around doing 100,000 things and visiting all these people and going here, there and everywhere. You know, to have someone who was there to just work the mill and do the generator and service the cars and all this kind of stuff was a big blessing and help to him. And then I went out and doing other ministries as well. So he still needs a hand out at Yonki, teaching in the Bible school out there and everything. I don't have a picture of me teaching out in Bible school in Yonki because I haven't done it yet. So we'll just say that that's what's going to happen. Well, it wasn't there when I was there, so. Youth camp. Youth camp is massive. I remember every year we have youth camp. Last year we had 450 campers turn up. The year before that we had 650 campers turn up. It was unreal. Hey, we had all these kids, all youth. And I'm like from 10-year-olds to 30-year-olds. They're the teenagers. And we're like, no kids. And you're like, no adults. So you got to look at these guys and it's like, yeah, well, you've got a beard and you've got kids and you've got a wife. So you're not really a camper, sorry, you know. So then you got to, yeah, these are logistical issues. You know, in Australia, this is easy to deal with. You can just say no. But in New Guinea, these guys, some of these guys trekked like 2-3 days to get to camp. There was one group of people that took 3 days to get to camp. They walked for 2 days, walk another half a day, catch a truck, another half day into town, another half day to get to Kainantu and walk the last 8 Ks down the highway to get to Yonki Station. They were way out in the bush. 3 days to get to camp, you know, the commitment. And then they get there and you say, no, you're too old. You know, you can't really do that. But camp is a huge ministry. You know, they love it. There's nothing, like I was saying, there's nothing for youth and for young people. So when there's a youth camp on, you know, it's big and everyone knows about it. There was supposedly going to be 1,000 people come to camp last year. We had 450. But what happened, there was a big fight on the highway and the highway was closed and someone was killed and they burned all these trucks down and everything and they blocked the highway here and they blocked the highway down here and we're here on the highway and so no one could get through. And this happened on Monday. And there was about 10 or 12 churches that all rung up and said, we can't get through, the highway's shut, the highway's shut. And so, we don't know, the Lord knows. And then on Friday, the highway opened up. You know, seriously, the rascals had a week of rampaging, just they literally just burned cars and chucked stones at trucks and burned them, and they just caused havoc, and all the politicians were calm and trying to give them peace and all this kind of stuff. And yeah, so that was a miracle that the highway opened at Friday, because then all the campers could leave. And it was quite dangerous for some of the campers because they was trying to stop the people from out west coming through the highway here, but there was people from out west at camp, so they would have had to go back through like the enemy territory where they're holding them up and trying to stop them and fighting with them and killing them and everything. But miraculously, the highway was opened up. You know, so pray for things like this, you know, just logistical issues. But having camp, we have 600 or 500 campers. That's the Bible school building there, all crammed in there. And they're loving it, eh? They're singing songs and playing games, and they worked really well. No one bickered and no one argued, and they all said their memory verses, and this is what they ate. Pretty good food, hey? They call that kumu. So that's all like your leafy kind of food. You can see there's spring onion there and cabbage and some broccoli and all different things like that. But that's what they ate. Heaps of rice. Feed them, these guys. Those kitchen people had the hugest job, eh? They peeled, I think they said they were doing 1,200 potatoes a day. Cooking them in the ground oven, you know, moo-mooing them, just so they could eat breakfast, lunch and dinner, you know, and feeding these guys. You know, they're all lined up for food. You know, camp, having these guys around, it was great fun, eh? Like, that's just the biggest Friday Awana night or Spark night, whatever. It's just the biggest night you'll ever have, and it goes all week. You know what camp's like. Camp is awesome. It's pretty overwhelming and scary when you're looking at these guys and you're like, man, I've got to try and get these guys into teams and play games and all this kind of stuff. But see them respond to God's word. Dave O'Cotton, a guy from Mount Gambier, would come up and preach. And he always did a really good job. We've had camp for 3 years now. And the people, just God's working, you know. He's like, I need to sort this out in my life. People are getting saved. And it was just such a really good blessing. I got to lead this kid to the Lord. That was a good encouragement. That was Friday night, last night of camp. I'm like, yeah, I'm getting to pray with this guy, lead him to the Lord. You know, that's what it's all about, leading these people to the Lord. You know, they're all needing something in their life. And, you know, the village life isn't going to give it to them. The rascal life isn't going to give it to them. The drug, they call them drug bodies. The drug body life isn't going to give it to them. You know, and they're here, different churches. This is out at Yababi. Powering right through this. They built a new church out there. I think, where's Mr. Hine? Up here. Yeah, your brother went out there, didn't he? And they built that church. So this is an old photo. They've built a nice new building. It's got tin walls and a tin roof and everything inside the church up there. This was a bush church. A lot of churches are like this, though. This is a good bush church. This is one of the better bush churches. So they meet in places like this, and they're faithful. They're faithful people. It's unreal working with these guys. That's at Ijamana. It was raining that day. This was at Karufi, another village that we went out to. There was a funeral there, and I preached there. They had 4 dead bodies there. You can see the coffins up behind me. And there was a big massacre in town in Kainantu, and 20-something people were killed, and they're all from our area. So there was 2 from Ijamana and 4 from Karufi and some from Tirakave and all our little areas. They were targeted in town. You know, they live in their little groups, and they did it in the daytime in the markets, and they opened up in the middle of the day markets with machine guns and machetes, and it was bad, eh? And we got to preach at this funeral. That was a bit of a scary experience because they are really superstitious people, and they're white. When you're white and you're going around funerals, they think you're stealing spirits. Or they're animists. They're animistic people. They really are. I saw a grave. I've got a photo of it. It had a water bottle sitting on the grave. I said, "What's the bottle there for?" It says, "Oh, so the spirit can come back and have a drink." I was with Peter, and I said, "Yeah, well, what do they think when the water level doesn't go down?" He's like, "Well, the spirit comes and drinks the water spirit." You know, they're full-on animists. Like Uncle Bill will come back and haunt you. Like, seriously, they are bad witch doctors. And so we got in there, and we preached, and we got out pretty quick. It was a pretty crazy experience. They're all wailing. They put mud all over themselves, and they wail. You know, ooh. You hear them across the valley. They go for days. Sounds really scary, eh? So that was a bit of an experience. These guys here are some of our mates. This here is at a Mumpoi. Now, you'll be reading a fair bit about a Mumpoi in Dave's letters. You know, that village Tiote, and they had that big fight and their village was burnt down and they got chased off their land. Well, these guys were involved in that. As part of Tiote, they had to join up with Tiote and fight with them, not like against them. They're just below the hill. They're down here, and Tiote was up there. So when Dave's praying for these guys are the Mumpoi guys, that the guys that were involved in the fight and that have been chased off their land and they're trying to negotiate peace, these are the guys. Okay, so these are the people. This guy here is Esau. He's the one on the far right holding a gun. One of those guys, I can't remember his name. I think it's the guy who's holding the gun on the left like this. He got his finger shot off a while ago. You know, so he's that close to dying. You know, this is real. Before that big fight happened, I went out to Yababi and preached, and Dave went out to Tiote. And a couple of weeks, or it was the week after, there was a guy who was preaching, and the next Monday morning there was a little attack on Tiote and one guy was killed. And he says, "Yeah, I know that guy who was killed. He was sitting right at the front down there preaching to him on Sunday, the day before. 24 hours ago, this guy was sitting there getting preached at by Dave, hearing gospel." And so these guys, they live in fear. You know, that's why they carry big long machetes and guns. They're just in their pockets. That's just like, "Hey, can we see some guns?" And they're just like, "Oh yeah, okay." You know, and that's just what they go, "I'll just go to my house and pull out that one in the middle." It's a big homemade thing. You know, and so these are the guys that we're praying for. When you're praying for the Tiote and the Mumpoi people to negotiate peace and they can come back on their land and resettle and have peace, and they're at his house. Remember, he had them at his house. I don't know if you got that letter, but he had some from this side and some from this side, and they met at Dave Crow's house to negotiate peace and try and get him to make the ceasefire and everything. These are the guys you're praying for. Okay, so that's important to see these guys. And these are our friends. You know, this guy's Esau. He's a hired hitman. You know, you can pay this guy to go and have someone knocked off or lead your village into war against another village. That's his job. And I've seen him. He's like picked up my baby Reuben and given him a hug, you know, and you're just looking at these guys going, something's just not quite right there. You know, they're just so gentle and loving and kind in some ways, but then other ways you just got to pray for these guys. They need to get saved. You know, they're just lost. And you can preach to them. You can say, "Oi, You nearly died. I had one guy, Simon, this leader of that village, he had a big bullet hole in his stomach here. He showed me the scar, big round scar there. And he goes, in this fight, I'll talk about it in this fight. Oh, yeah, I got shot. He survived. He got shot a couple of times. And then I was with someone else, and he whispers to me afterward, he goes, do you know who shot Simon? And he says, it was my brother. He's like, don't tell him that. I'm like, I won't. But, you know, this photo, here's Fraggle. I'll just talk to you a little bit about this guy, Fraggle. He's about this tall, hey? I'm not kidding you. He's this tall. He comes up to my shoulder. Most Papua New Guineans do. And that's Esau on the right. I can't remember those other two guys' names. But about 15 years ago, Fraggle was an enemy of these guys and was fighting against them. He was a warrior. He had big dreadlocks and he had shotguns, and he was fighting against over that mountain in the background, and over there is where we come from, where he comes from. And they are traditional enemies with these guys. And he's gotten saved. Fraggle miraculously got saved. You know, God is a miracle worker. You know, we look at these guys. They think they're too bad to get saved. They go, no, I'm too bad to get saved. I've killed too many people. Or, I've done this or I've done that. You know, God can't save me. You know, I'm too bad for that. But Fraggle's gotten saved. And I just think of that passage where it says, those that are forgiven much, love much. Because the crimes that he's committed, you know, he'd be worthy of the death penalty for sure. And he's a Christian. And he's here in a Mumpoy with these guys who 15 years ago he was fighting against. And he's there, and they've got their guns out, and they're all just posing. But 15 years ago, they were fighting against each other. His testimony is so much that he can come and freely walk into that village and preach and have fellowship with them and sleep in the village there and walk out without fear. You know, years ago, he would have been killed on sight. You know, and now he doesn't walk around with a machete or a gun, or he's just got tracts in his Bible, and he's ready to preach, and he'll do a 3-day circuit, walk from his village to Mumpoy here, have fellowship, preach, spend the night there, walk the next day over to Yababi, stay there, same thing, traditional enemies, stay at Yababi for the night, next day walk home, and he would do that every second week, like that. And that verse, when it says love your enemies, you know, love your enemies. They're his enemies. And he's gone in there with Dave Crow when they've gone to fights and on different fellowships and outreaches and things, and he's gone, hey guys, you know, I used to hate you, and I don't hate you anymore. I love you. You know, I love you guys, and I'm not here to kill you, and I'm sorry that I hated you and we fought, but now I want to give you God's word. And he's earned their trust and their respect in showing him the love and the kindness of God, and he can go in there and freely witness. And he goes in there and intermediates with the fights and everything like this. That's why I call this photo a picture of a miracle, because he's him. These guys aren't saved. These guys aren't saved, but Fraggle is, and God's worked so much in his life and in his testimony that he can have that liberty to walk in there and have fellowship and peace amongst his enemies and preach to them and love them and bring in the gospel. Like, it would be so easy to go, no, they killed my dad or they killed my brother when we were in the fight, so I'm not going to be, but I'm not going to go and do anything. I'm not going to go and witness to him or anything. But he's just got such a burden. This guy goes everywhere. He's just a machine. He is unstoppable. He's just not afraid of anyone. He just goes and goes and goes and goes. It's amazing seeing what God has done in these people's lives. You know, how God can save an old rascal. You know, these guys really, they're lawless. They're a law unto themselves. They just do their own thing. They literally get away with murder. You can murder someone in the village and blame it on witchcraft and get away with it. You know, and then there's the payback, and they killed them, and so that's the fear that people live in. And witch doctors getting saved. I don't have a photo of this man, but there was a man who was a witch doctor. It was his job to go up in the bush, up in the mountain with the man or the guy that was killed, and sit up in the bush with the dead body by himself and work his magic and drink his potions and have a fire and sit in the bush and call up the demons for this guy to give him a name of who to go and get payback on. That was his job, calling up the demons. And he would come down the village and everyone would be waiting. You know, imagine the fear. Because it could be anyone. It could be the guy's wife who was killed. It could be 5-year-old kid. It could be someone from an enemy village, you know. Whatever name he comes back down with the village, to the village with, there's a dead man. That person, it could be a woman, it could be a girl, boy, old lady, old man, anyone. You know, the fear that Satan has over these people, just about. Now this man is a Christian. A faithful man in a church over in another village is an older guy. And it was his job as a witch doctor. You know, that's not only all that he did. But yeah, these people can get saved. They're not too far. And you try and tell them that, and they're like, no, I'm too bad. No. But these people, it's just amazing seeing what God can do, you know. Like, you could not bring yourself out of a life like that, could you? You could not bring yourself out of a life where you're enemies with these guys to walking in to witness and get tracks and intermediate in their fights and things like this. It's unreal seeing what God has done over there. It's unreal for us being able to go over there and be a part of it and seeing this and working alongside the Crows and going and seeing Papua New Guinea and everything like this. I thought it was going to change. There's a photo of us on the back of the truck. It's really exciting, isn't it? That's how we left New Guinea. It's fun riding on the back of the truck. There's Fraggle. That's a massive big marijuana plant. Yeah, so I'll just flick through a couple of pictures now anyway. So that's the ministry of Papua New Guinea and what we're going to be involved in and what we're going to be doing. It's big. There's a lot of things. That guy got shot in the fight. He's from a Mumbai. But yeah, visiting people in the hospitals and prison and walking across the dodgy bridge of death. You don't want to fall off there. It's deep and the water's moving pretty quickly. That was one of the youth camps that we had. You know, people are praying there. This guy's lame. He just walks around on his hands and dragging his legs up the hills. That's the town. That's Madang in town. The towns are like slums. And that's Papua New Guinea. Yeah, let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. When we're in New Guinea and we were praying, like, God, what do you want us to do? Do you want us here full time? And God's just going, yes. And then he gave me this verse, and I'm like, let your light shine before... These people are in darkness. And God gave me this verse, and he said, let your light shine before men that they may see good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. That was the verse that the Lord gave me just before we left New Guinea. You know, confirmation that God wants us to do this and what he has for our lives and what we need to do for him. So, yeah. Does anyone have any questions or anything? Open up a question time. Do you do that around here? Is that all right? Do you have a question? You can... Don't grill me in public, please. Anyone got any questions or anything or want to know anything about anything? No? Good. All right. You can talk to us afterwards anyway. So we've got some prayer cards out on the table. Feel free to take some if you want, but please pray for us as we go.